This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dorrinal and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back. Geek Gab for Saturday, November 7th, 2020. Still 2020.
Oh boy, is it. Yes, it is November. We already have our first fan request of the day. I'm going straight to the chat, DW. I hope you don't mind.
Go for it.
Bradford Walker, we are going to not talk about, it's been a terrible week. We're not talking about any of that crap. This is nothing but rainbows and sunshine here on the Geek Gab. Wouldn't you agree, Daddy Warpig?
Oh, sure. Rainbows and sunshine. No, actually, it's been a good day for me because supposedly today was supposed to be the first day of like heavy snowstorms. And I don't think it's happened.
Oh, good. I mean, that's a mixed blessing. I do recall enjoying the snows of Utah, but I mean, you only need 3 or 4 good snowstorms a year before you're like, all right, let's bring on the warm weather.
Let's move this on. Yeah, I honest to gosh, when I become wealthy, I'm moving to some place that is moderately warm, to where I will neither have to broil in summer nor freeze in winter, because I am getting tired of both of those things.
Everybody says that, and they end up somewhere on eastern Florida or near Los Angeles. And that's how you get those two places.
I really, really would like not to end up either in Hurricane Alley or in Hell on Earth. So I've been strongly thinking about tracking down John Mollison. This is not a joke. I am seriously considering this. This is an action plan that I came up with just in the last week. So this tells you how serious I am, is I have actually formulated a step-by-step plan to prepare myself for the future eventuality of moving to a nice warm place. I want to track down John Mollison, who lives in Hawaii, and talk to him about what it's like to live in Hawaii and see if that's a place I can reasonably move to once I have the money. You think that I'd be doing a bit at this point. I am not doing a bit. This is a life change I am actually seriously considering making when I have the money. I am also considering U.S. islands such as Guam, the Virgin Islands, or someplace in the Caribbean.
There's also a little-known island out in the Pacific that basically has some sort of old military base and a bunch of scuba divers, and that's it, called Kwajalein. I knew someone who actually got a job out there working for the government. Spent like 5 years around nobody on an island, just working in some office. There you go.
I just would really like to live in a place that's not Utah. I love Utah, don't get me wrong, but I hate the weather. I hate the weather.
That's too bad. It's had nothing but nice things to say about you. Hey.
I don't want to go on about the weather. I want to change the subject.
This is great. I'm enjoying the first week of November. Even though I'm in the land of the Douglas fir, there are many deciduous trees turning. I've got a bright orange burst just outside my window. I love fall. I love to hear about it. This is my second or third favorite season. This is just fantastic. That was a joke. There are only 4 seasons. Come on, help me out here.
I'm sorry, I'm still plowing my way through.
You're not supposed to set me up for Yo Mama jokes like that. It doesn't work.
I'll be honest. I've got a little bit of a migraine today. Not a huge one, just a little bit of a one. Just enough to kind of slow me down. I'm trying to plow through that, trying to get to that point of, complete awakeness and awareness and snappiness. I haven't reached there yet. I was hoping starting the show would snap me out of it.
Well, that's okay.
I wanted to start the show with the traditional, how was your week, Dorrinal? But you've already told me how was your week before the show started.
How was my week? Everybody's had quite a week. I'm focused on the beautiful colors, hanging out with my pal. I had a great conversation with my aunt where I talked about some of the. Did I tell you that I was doing a little ancestry research the past month? I did some of that. Well, let me just say, first of all, the conversation was nice. She was able to sort of corroborate some of the stuff I had learned about, my family. I will have to plug Ancestry.com. I subscribed to that for a month, and one of my other aunts has done a lot of work on that site, and so I used some of that, and I dug a little more into the other side of my family tree. And between Ancestry.com's search engine and the fact that all these governments and records places have gotten their records scanned in online and searchable in the past 10, 20 years, it's amazing what you can find. And for me, much of my heritage is Irish. It's tough to get records any older than 1850, but that's old enough for you to determine, if you're American, to determine, okay, which of my ancestors came across and when did they land at Ellis Island, right? Cool stuff. Absolutely. It's a little expensive at like $20 a month, but it was great. And yes, shout out to Utah. A lot of the records in the databases and search engine relies on all the hard work done in Provo. Speaking of Utah, nobody's into genealogy. As I say, I don't know of anybody as into genealogy as the Mormons out there, and it's cool. It's a really cool service.
I was one of those volunteers for a while.
Oh yeah, what was that like?
It was very, very interesting, but man, when you got into trying to read Italian, there were people there who had done it for long enough that they could read handwritten Italian records from before World War II. But holy crap, I could not do that. Because they have this weird system of calligraphy or cursive, and it was almost impossible to read. I loved doing Revolutionary War recruitment records because those were just fascinating. And then, of course, World War II records were great. Just to read names and where people came from and, them signing up and putting it down. Those were not primary records for research, but you got to put them in and then people could find them and attach them to other records to make the genealogical discoveries more full as supporting evidence of the existence of this person. It was great. It was great volunteer work. I enjoyed it quite a lot, and you were actually helping people find out more about their family, find out about their service in World War II or the Revolutionary War. I did, excuse me, marriage records. I did a whole slew of marriage records for um, Black citizens in Georgia for the 1930s. Um, and also went back to the I'm going to say 1910s in the deep South, and you would just run across really odd, incongruous marriages. Like you'd be flipping through it, and all of a sudden you'd run across one that was like a 40-year-old woman and 19-year-old man getting married. And
The old Grover Cleveland trick. I like it.
Most of them were white people getting married. The vast majority were. But you run across a white woman and a black man occasionally, or a white man and a black woman, and you just be thinking, and these were in municipal, in one city, in a municipal city, big city. And you'd be thinking, or I'd be thinking, I just wonder what the story was behind that. Like, what had happened to make some of these people hooking up? I ran across one where there was a Jewish man and a black woman in 1910 in the deep South, and you're like, I really wonder, how those people met, how they fell in love, what made them decide to get married.
Yeah, at that time when that was a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I wanted to know. I wanted to know who they were and what their life was like. It was fascinating.
Wow.
And so, that's why I'm sure, people in their family line who had them as their ancestors would be even more interested than I was, or could be. So it was great feeling like I was, contributing to their descendants, getting to learn more about their ancestors, actually doing something to help them someday.
It's so rewarding. I had the same experience on a much smaller scale. Of course, users can contact each other. So I was contacted from someone who was like, hey, I think we're related. I don't know how. And so I spent a couple of hours working on my tree and looked at their tree, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy right here in this part of your tree, that's my grandfather. Boom, done. I was like, oh cool. So I've got some fourth cousin over in Boston or something like that, distant relative. That's cool. And it was nice to sort of help them out. Really rewarding. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the one secret I found is that at Ellis Island, when you were, I don't know who determined where the immigrants go, whether it was a decision of the U.S. government or word of mouth amongst the immigrants, but just about every Irishman who crossed from the southwest of Ireland, places like County Cork, they all went straight from Ellis Island to New Haven, Connecticut. It was
Really?
It was just a big Irish community in New Haven. And there's at least one family, I'm not making this up, there's at least one family who resided in two houses on the same street in New Haven for over 100 years.
Wow.
It was from the beginning of the, large immigration, right? Ellis Island and so forth, up until the 20th century, through the 20th century, they lived, there's this huge Irish immigrant community in the same neighborhood in New Haven. Interesting. I've got new information. Matthew Martin, this is fascinating. New Haven was where the Knights of Columbus were founded, and their founder was just beatified last week. That's fascinating. I'm gonna have to look into this. I need to know more. Of course, yeah. And you look at all the records, and of course, all the Irish parts of my family, it's like 100% Roman Catholic, and so it was a big. Well, what can I say? It was just a big ethnic Irish community. I love that stuff. It's so interesting.
I had no idea Connecticut was a big Irish settlement.
Yes, Connecticut was a big destination for Irish and Italian immigrants. I've talked about this on the show, actually, when I went to Italy for a nice visit. Yes, it's as gorgeous as they say, by the way. I found the best pizza was in Naples, right? You're in southern Italy, beautiful area, tastiest pizza. I found out that most of the Italian immigrants that settled in New Haven and New York City, they're from Naples. It's all southern Italian people. I was like, oh, I get it. And the guys that you find in New Jersey, where you find the most outstanding seafood dishes, right? I love food, but anyway, they're Sicilian.
Okay.
So the Sicilians ended up, and that's where you get the sort of stereotypical Jersey Shore mafia, right? Like the New York mafia, the New Jersey mafia, that stereotype. That's a Sicilian stereotype, and Connecticut has lots of Irish and lots of Italian, and a fair bit of Polish. Basically, all the Catholics showed up on Ellis Island, and they shipped them off to New England. The history is fascinating. Oh, and of course, Massachusetts famously, Boston's the other huge Irish diaspora city in the Northeast.
See, in Utah, basically got people from Britain, the British Isles, but they were all converts to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then we started getting converts from all over. But that was the original large part of it was England, the Isle of Man, which is where my recent ancestors came from. In the turn of the last century, 100 years ago, my ancestors were Cowleys from the Isle of Man, and they were pioneers. They got to America and sold what they had to come over here to come to Utah. So they arrived in Utah with nothing. So we don't have any family heirlooms or anything going back old because they couldn't get to Utah carrying those. And so my recent ancestors literally walked across the plains to get to Utah.
Wow. That's a cool story.
And but on the other hand, I also have ancestors on both sides of my family who came over on the Mayflower. So
yeah, Mayflower represent. So you're like the old school WASP Mormon hybrid. Is that?
Yeah, I'm an OG American. I have American blood going back to 1600.
Yeah. But you don't open with that. You don't you don't say that on the first date like, hey, do you know my ancestors came on the Mayflower? Want to go back to my place? It doesn't really work anymore.
So yeah, it was.
I love that stuff. Well, yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely nothing. You really have to. It really puts into perspective just how much we have in America just as people, and how plentiful this place is, because I have a similar story. One of my great grandfathers, one of the ones who actually came across, is just a manservant in someone's home. Had nothing. Borrowed 15 pounds sterling from a cousin to pay for his ticket. 10 years later, he's in New Haven, he's got a mortgage, he's married, and he's like had 3 out of 10 kids, right? You go from nothing to, at the very least, having a home and a steady job, and it's amazing. It's really amazing.
All right. Well, I will tell you what. I have been woefully underread for a long time. I have not been reading nearly as much as I have wanted to. And so instead of watching movies and TV shows and stuff the last few weeks, I have been reading, because I can read, I have been reading so many hours a day. Seriously, 7 or 8 hours a day. I've just been tearing through books and stuff.
Holy cow, what kind of stuff have you been reading?
I read, let's start. I read the Monster Hunter Trilogy that John Ringo did with Larry Correia. Monster Hunter Grunge, Monster Hunter Sinners, Monster Hunter Saints, which is about the MHI universe back in the 1980s. I was misled into reading Larry Correia's Son of the Black Sword books, which there's 3 of them published, because I was under the impression that it was a trilogy. And I was lied to. It is not a trilogy. I know, because I read the 3 books and it did not come to a satisfactory conclusion.
Oh, not that they weren't connected, but it is not a completed trilogy.
It's not over. I got to the end of the 3rd book and I was like, what the hell?
Should have known better. It's a fantasy series. Those don't actually end.
Yeah, it's an epic fantasy series, so I don't know if he's got it planned out to 10 volumes or what, but
that would be suicide. Yeah, you can't do that. You should know by now that planning an ending to your series is you're literally writing your death date. You just toss it in, because when as soon as you get to that penultimate book, it's over. You're going to catch something.
And John Ringo also has a zombie series out. I think it's called the Black Tide Rising series. And Chuck Gannon wrote a book set in the same setting, working with Ringo. So I decided I'd start the series over to remind myself of what's going on and to read the couple of books I hadn't read in the series yet, and then start and then end up with his. And I've read the first 3 books in the series. I literally got done with the third one about a half an hour before the show started today. So I was reading for 2 hours before the show today.
Wow. What's the name of those books again?
Black Tide Rising series. So I've been reading a lot of John Ringo recently. Before the Saints, Sinners, Grunge books. In fact, I read his Paladin of Shadows. They're the ones that started off as, the first one is a really twisted, like, techno thriller erotica book, which I did not read. That's Ghost. I did not read that. But the second book on gets more techno thrillery, and by the end, there's really no sex in them at all. So I read that series before I started the MHI ones again. So yeah, I've read a lot of John Ringo in the past month or so, past few weeks.
And he's a Mill SF guy like Larry Correia, right?
Yes. The Legacy of Aldonada is some really great stuff. That's all Mill SF. Although the book he did with Colonel Tom Kratman, if I'm saying the name right, which is called Watch on the Rhine, is really dark. It is just depressing. I mean, don't get me wrong, the good guys, I don't think there are any good guys. The guys that are fighting for the survival of humankind win. But man, is it grim. Grim book. Yeah. But I've been enjoying the heck out of being able to read again. There was a while there where I couldn't read at all. And it was very, very depressing. Oh, and I also I read about an 8-month backlog of Justice League Dark. When they rebooted the DC universe for the last time, they have like 4 different sub Justice Leagues, and they might have canceled a couple of them recently. But one of them was Justice League Dark, which is the magic Justice League. They deal with magical threats. So Wonder Woman is in charge, and they've got Man-Bat and Detective Chimp and the Swamp Thing, Zatara, John Constantine. So I started reading that when it first came out, and I love it. It's fabulous. They've done just great stuff with it, and I haven't been reading it for the last 9 months, maybe 10 months, because I haven't been able to read a whole lot. So I just got, in the middle of reading all this, right after I finished Paladin of Shadows and before I picked up MHI again, I read 9 issues of that in a row, which was all brand new, and that was just great. That was awesome to be able to read it. It was well written. I enjoyed the characters. I think the team doing it is doing a killer job. I also caught up on the Terrifics mostly, and the team doing that is doing an incredible job now. It's much better than it was at the beginning. I'm still sad that they had to drop the silencer. I'm hoping for a comeback on that character sometime, but I'm really glad that the Terrifics have gotten better. That's another comic book series by DC. So I don't know. Do you want me to do some reviews on these?
You've just hit me with the fire hose. I heard a bunch of stuff that came out. Why don't you pick one to talk about? Okay, I'll do this like an interview. So, Daddy Warpig, which one of those titles really stood out to you as a great read or a great example of something that that really inspired you?
The Monster, all of them are great reads. Otherwise, I wouldn't be reading them. Because I've stuck with, I think it's now 25 or 27 issues of the Terrifics, about the same of Justice League Dark, and I guarantee you I would not have stuck with comic book series that I'm actually paying for at $4 an issue if they weren't worthwhile. Because $4 for 22 pages of comic is not worth it if they're not good.
Sure.
I could do better with that money. Better things with that money. I love the atmosphere and mood of Justice League Dark. They're dealing with witches and monsters and dark things that go bump in the night and magical stuff, artifacts, cabals of magicians, and it's just great. I love all that stuff. And it's comic book magic. It's not high fantasy. It's not sword and sorcery, really. It's comic booky magic, which I've always kind of had a thing for. And so, yeah, a large part of it is I just enjoy the milieu. I just enjoy the characters. I just enjoy where they go and who they deal with. Etrigan, the Rhyming Demon, which is a DC character I've always got a kick out of ever since I first read him back in the 70s. Comic book demonology is fun because it's usually not serious and super grim and dark, and they do interesting things out of them because they make them comic book heroes and villains.
Is that, let me hazard a guess, is that because they're so outsized, larger than life, it's crazy supernatural stuff. It's fun to render those in images. It's fun to play around with that.
They're colorful. Like your character from the campaign we did.
I'm drawing a blank because everything I play is awesome.
Necessary Evil.
Oh yeah, it was sort of like a evil Doctor Strange, warlock harnessing the powers of hell to do stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I love horror movies. Like The Exorcist and things like that, demon possession and that found footage thing, Paranormal Activity, right? I like those. Those are more serious. Those are darker and, scary. And comic book demonology isn't like that. It's big and it's colorful. And even when it is a little bit grimmer, like in Hellblazer, it's still comic booky. And a lot, not everything that they face, but a lot of it is in that camp. And it's great and it's fun. And that's why I like Justice League Dark. And they've had great plots. They've had a long-running enemy they've been dealing with. And it's fighting bad guys and winning, and it's not this misery woke lecturing. It's comic book heroes fighting comic book bad guys, and things invading from outside of what they thought they knew reality was, and just love it. Just great. So the characters are great too. Detective Chimp he came from another DC series I don't know about, and so I didn't know about his character until this series. But the way he is in this series is awesome. He's just fun and funny. He's this world-weary he's a detective noir character, right? Have you ever seen film noir movies?
Yeah, Philip Marlowe.
Yeah, Philip Marlowe. He's Philip Marlowe who's been turned into a chimpanzee.
Because it's a comic book, and screw you, I can draw what I want.
Exactly. And he's been given a magic sword that's like a key to a pocket dimension of magic. And it's a powerful magical weapon, only it doesn't work right anymore. And so he just sits at a bar and drinks and helps them. He's a detective. He's not as good as Batman, but he's one of the best detectives in the world. Only he's stuck in the body of a chimpanzee. It's awesome. I mean, that's a fun character to be around.
Can he talk though, or is he forced to write? Oh, I can imagine this poor guy's got these amazing analytical skills, and he's forced to scrawl on a chalkboard when he needs to talk to people.
He's just fun. And one of the other characters is Man-Bat, which I don't know if you remember from Batman the Animated Series. He's the guy who drank the potion and turned into a giant man-sized bat. He's got control of the transformation now, but he is absolutely this rigid believer in science and reason and chemistry and physics. Only now he's had to accept that magic is real, and he's been struggling with that over the first part of the series. And now he's trying to find some way to systematize magic and organize magic and understand magic. And he's researching magic. And he's actually been a huge asset to the team, and he's a lot of fun to have around, because he's got this completely different outlook on the whole situation. And all the magicians think he's nuts to try and come at magic like this, but he's actually been the source of a lot of their big breakthroughs into the mysteries of what's going on. They just picked a good range of characters to be on the team that have conflicting viewpoints on magic and come at it from totally different directions, but they all work together to make a good team. And and Justice League Dark has been around for a while. This is just the rebooted version. They've even had a Justice League Dark cartoon TV series that was done recently, maybe for the DC channel or something. I don't remember. But yeah, it's just a fun comic series, and I really enjoy it.
That's heartening to hear. I guess what I'm hearing is, as someone who doesn't really care much about the medium, at the end of the day, it sounds like you really need good writers who care about their craft, who care about the medium they're engaging in, who are going to think about, okay, which characters are we going to use? How are we going to use those characters? How are we going to make this fun and interesting? Because without seeing the actual covers and the images that you're talking about, right? I'm not looking at the pages as you did. I'm just listening to your description. It sounds like you've got writers who actually care and want to tell the story, and who are either given or chose these characters and said, wow, here's some cool things I can do with this character to make him appropriate or make it interesting, or really think about what would this character do in this setting. And that's tough to do, and that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes. They put thought into making entertaining stories. So.
Amen. Well, that's cool. So we talked about Justice League Dark. I wanna go back to the MLSF books that you read. I had a question. This is sort of a personal thing. I read Monster Hunter International. It was like a free on Amazon ebook, and it was kind of fun, but it didn't make me want to read more Larry Correia. So, and I've been told that the Son of the Black Sword is better, and I've also been told that he refined his craft and got much better. So, that notwithstanding, help me, someone who didn't think much of it, help me understand what makes those Correia and Ringo books so, what's the word? Interesting, so engaging.
Well, MHI was his first book.
For first book, it's like, if you put it in that light, it's a really good first book.
And he didn't take as long as Butcher did to get off the ground. But you got to understand this about Larry. Larry fundamentally, on a really deep level, doesn't get genre. He doesn't understand genre limitations, and he's kind of like a caveman if you gave him a Nintendo Switch. In that, the Nintendo Switch in this analogy is, a genre of fiction. He takes it, he pounds it against the rock until shiny stuff comes out, and then he plays with it and makes something that's all his own. He definitely doesn't play with it as a Nintendo Switch. But somehow what he makes from it is even cooler than a Nintendo Switch.
He just comes in and writes what he thinks is cool without worrying about. There's no genre limitations. He just comes in and makes a Larry Correia shaped hole in the wall, and either you like it or you don't.
Right. So he has a series that is a fantasy steampunk superhero or a series set just prior to World War II. And it's after he's written a few of his Monster Hunter International series. And so he's had a lot of time to work on his craft. And you might find that the first book of that series might be more up your alley. It's called the Grim Noir Chronicles. And the first book is called Hard Magic.
Hard Magic.
Oh, yeah. It's a detective noir, fantasy noir, steampunk superhero series. And there might be a couple more in there I forgot.
Okay. I mean, yeah, if you're going to... That's where you go all in and you say, you know what? What do we call this so that everybody knows exactly what it is just by the title? Hard Magic. Let's just put a Carrie Dresden knockoff character on the front cover. Boom, nailed it.
Or you might just try the second book out in the Monster Hunter International series. That's also might be a good choice. Because he did improve vastly between the first and second books.
Well, I may give it a try once I decide to take up reading again.
Apparently, I have... when I decided to take up reading again, I decided to overdose. I just have been... I've been trying to get caught up. Not even caught up with my reading, just caught up with the fact that I am reading. And I'm loving it. I'm loving it!
Yeah.
I like Larry. I like Larry Correia because I think he makes interesting characters. I like Larry Correia because he does a lot of action in his books. He doesn't let his stories sit around and get stale. He blows things up. He has car chases and gunfights. I like Larry because he does great descriptions. That is, when you're reading his action scenes, you know what's going on, and he knows how to describe them. I like Larry because he keeps his stories moving. I like Larry because his goal is to entertain the audience and he doesn't lecture them at all. I like Larry because right before I started reading Larry, I was on a urban fantasy kick, and I read a couple of okay urban fantasy novels, and then because I was reading, Jim Butcher, I was reading Harry Dresden, and I thought, man, and I ran out of Harry Dresden. I thought, man, I want to read some Harry Dresden, but there isn't anymore. I'll try some off-brand Harry Dresden. And that didn't go well. So I read a couple of books that were actually okay, but they weren't Harry Dresden. And then I read a couple of books that were awful, just terrible. They were about a monster hunter who didn't hunt monsters.
I don't understand.
Whose approach to evil monsters who literally ate human beings for food was to worry about the ecological balance of unnatural, horrific things.
Why? That's not what monster... No.
Now, this is the same person who got that guy later, this happened years later, who got that guy kicked out of WorldCon and, or whatever that convention was in London. World Fantasy Con, there was a big comedian who Neil Gaiman had gotten set up and who has continued to be this woke, miserable person since then. These are a couple of novels she wrote, But when she sees her character in the novel now, when she sees a slavering beastie who lives by eating human babies, her character's response is to say, won't somebody think of the beastie? Well, I was angry after I got off those 2 books. So Monster Hunter International came along. And the main character and main group in Monster Hunter International, their primary concern when seeing such a slavering beastie is, where can I get more ammo? And so you've got to understand that I was in the perfect frame of mind to read Monster Hunter International and to want to continue reading it, because I was angry and I wanted a good book to read and a good Monster Hunter book to read. We're monster hunters, and this was a shocking revelation where monster hunters actually hunted monsters.
I will give him that. Even in his first book, it was definitely about shooting monsters.
So
yeah.
That is why I latched onto the series, despite flaws the first book might have had.
You know what my mistake was reading the first book? Is that I knew who Larry Correia was and had read his blog and stuff. We even had him on the show before I read Monster Hunter International.
Yes.
So the fact that the main character is unashamedly Larry Correia. It's just, what if the main character were a really tall, big accountant who also liked guns, but also shot monsters and got the girl and everything, blah blah blah. I'm like, all right, fine. I'm gonna let this happen. It was entertaining, but I kept rolling my eyes every chapter. Good. I'm glad that it scratches that itch. I'm glad he gets the shooting in and the. That's what you want out of a monster story. Either you want a tragedy where doomed people get mauled to pieces, or you get a proper adventure story where Arnold Schwarzenegger figures out how to evade the monster's notice and brings all of his guns and muscles to bear to take it out.
What's great about Monster Hunter International is it is what happens next after the horror movie's over. So you have the blonde bimbo who lives past the end of the horror movie, and she's the only one who does. She survives the vampires. And then you have the one guy who survived the zombie movie, right? Everybody else got eaten, but he's the one guy who survived. Only this time it's the black guy who survived. He didn't get eaten first. He escaped.
Right, because screw conventions.
And then you have one guy who survives the big evil werewolf, and all these people get put on a team. So what happens after the movie's over? Well, they get picked up by a professional monster hunter team, trained on how to kill monsters, put together on a team, and they go off to kill more monsters. So he took every single cliched character from monster movies, from B-movie monster movies. And he knew this because his hobby was watching B-movie monster movies, cheaply made monster movies. And then he showed the complicated side to all these characters. You know, the black guy isn't just the black guy. He's also really, really smart. And the blonde bimbo isn't just a blonde bimbo. She's really aware and smart, and she's really, really tough and can fight. And, you know, this guy isn't just an accountant. He's an accountant who can shoot really well. And he puts them all on a team and they go fight monsters. So that's why MHI is actually interesting. It's because it's what happens next after the sole survivors of these movies. What do they do next? It's an interesting twist on monster movies.
A welcome twist.
Yes, in a lot of ways. So that's why I would recommend this series, even if you didn't like the first one, because it was a first book that the author ever wrote, and because that the character was originally modeled on Larry. And it's true. But it is, you know, it has depth there and it has interesting twists there.
Cool. I don't have any more questions. It sounds like next time I want a little more action and monster stuff, I would do well to pick up the next book in the series and give Larry Correia another chance.
I would recommend it highly.
I didn't have anything else to ask or to talk about for today. How about you?
No. And we're
out of time.
We're out of time. Yeah.
It's been good. It's been good. I appreciate everybody hanging out in chat. It's been fun talking with you guys. Really fascinating stuff to talk about this week. I love it when we get a chance to do these shows with little or no theme and just get to explore what's on our minds. And I hope everybody listening live later appreciated it as well.
I am really glad we got to talk about Monster Hunter International because I really do love that series.
It's got a lot of fans. That's it for me for this week, Daddy Warpig. Thanks for hanging out with me as always. It's always good to hear what you're up to.
Sorry, I was just
letting you take a swig. Letting you take a swig
before we get to the. All right, folks. Let's see if we can back this up. Do we have any guests? We don't have any guests coming.
We don't have any guests lined up or anything like that. Next weekend is the 14th, and then the next 2 weekends are. We're probably not going to have a show, so we might have one more show before the holiday season kicks in, and then it'll be sporadic through the rest of the year. We don't have any guests right now.
All right. Oh. Well, I just have to say that it's darn cold in this house. All right.
Bring the snow.
Oh, yeah. We already got the cold. It's just... Yeah, I actually had to go out and scrounge up another blanket because, not for my whole body, just for my upper body, because it's been getting real cold in this house at night. It's been getting so cold it wakes me up in the middle of the night, and that is an unpleasant way to wake the hell up. That's why the Hawaii thing has been on my mind. But once I got this slightly thicker blanket, I just put it across my arms and my chest, and then I've been warm in that area. So I haven't had to wake up like that. I want a place where I can sleep without mosquitoes and yet sleep where it's warm. That's not too much to ask for. And hopefully that's out of the way of major hurricanes. That's why Florida was X off the charts. And also without the humidity, that's why the whole South was kicked out pretty early in my consideration. I have been thinking about this. This is not a bit. I have actually been seriously considering a major lifestyle change away from the desert. I'm sorry, Utah, I love you, but when I get rich, I'm going. All my family lives in this state. It's going to be hard to leave them, but man, I want a warm place to live. Okay, that wasn't where I was supposed to go with this. I was supposed to go something light. Thanks everybody for tuning into the show. We really, really appreciate it. Everybody who jumped in to the chat, everybody who's listening live and jumped into the chat to participate. We want to thank everyone who will listen later. You can listen on, of course, youtube.com/geekgab. That's youtube.com/geekgab. Or you can listen to us on the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or SoundCloud.com. That's SoundCloud.com. That way you can subscribe to the podcast, listen to it on. There we go. Just had to get that out. You can listen to us on the iDevice of your choice. Listen to us on an Android device, or listen to us live on the web, or download it for any other device you choose. In fact, I bet if you had a Zune and you really, really wanted to, you needed to, you were just hung up on the Zune and you wanted to make this show Zune-tastic, I'm betting you could download it off SoundCloud.com and do that if you really, really wanted to. That's how dedicated we are to your comfort, folks. Thanks for tuning in. We are signing off for today, but don't you worry, don't you fret. We will be back.